Tying another classic streamer pattern from the Hilliard book on Carrie Stevens streamers. This is a streamer called the Gray Miller. It's a pretty straightforward fly. It does have a tail. Often her streamers do not. Has a orange floss body, silver tag, silver rib. The wing is pretty much, I guess, where it gets its name from. It's a gray wing with a little bit shorter grizzly on it. And it has a two-tone throat to it, a white and yellow throat to it. Very, very nice bait fish pattern. I could see this being a popular and very productive fly, as it would definitely look like a lot of different bait fish in the water. So that's the Gray Miller. I'll get started tying. I'm going to start the Gray Miller with my hook in the vise. This is a Partridge CS5-9X in a size 4. It's a little bit shorter than the longer streamer hooks that I often use on these, and the primary reason is that the wing on this is some gray. There's 2 Gray Hackles on the inside here, flanked by a slightly shorter Grizzly Hackle, and the Gray Hackles that I have are a little bit short. My neck has been picked over and I just don't have any of the nice long ones for a longer hook. So that's the only reason why I chose this hook. It's just a little bit shorter. So after I debarb the hook, I'm going to attach my thread. For thread, I'm starting out with the Danville 210 Denier in white. I'm going to attach this a little bit more than halfway down the hook shank. I'm going to wrap down. I'm going to stop maybe about 1/4 of the hook shank or so, maybe 1/4 of an inch before the point of the hook. This is where I'm going to wrap in what is going to be the tag on this. The tag is some silver tinsel. I'm using a silver and gold Mylar tinsel in a size 12. This little bit actually has a size 14. No, I take it back, size 10. It is just a little scrap piece that's been sitting on my table here that can be utilized for something like this. I'm going to wrap down the shank and then back up where I tied that in. Then I can apply this tinsel. Now, if you want, I don't often do this in the videos just to not necessarily speed them up a little bit, but just to move things along, I guess. You can put some Dave Flex cement under the tag if you want on this. If this were a full tinsel body, I certainly would, because I don't want that to unravel. But this has a tail on it, and then it has a tinsel rib. But if you're going to tie these and you want them to be a little bit more durable, then, and that's something you do with, say, a tinsel body up here, there's no reason you can't with the tag as well. So I'm going to wrap that tag in, and you'll notice it's just a fairly short tag. It's not super long. I'm going to wrap this in, and then I'm going to tie that off. And I'm going to actually put in a couple wraps going rearward, because I have a tail to tie in, and the rib and the floss body. That's going to get me down a little bit further down here to shorten that tag up, which is what I want. The tail is just some orange hackle. I'm using some orange Shlappen here, like this. And I'm just taking, I actually like to use some of the fluff here with the kind of the split ends on it. A lot of times, a lot of that gets just kind of discarded in a lot of these flies, but this is an application where I kind of like to use that. I suppose if you were tying this to be a dress fly for framing or something, you might not include that in there. I want this to go maybe about 1/4, maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of the distance or the shank of the hook past the bend. Tie that in, wrapping that down. You're going to end up with a little bit of a bump back here. So I'm trimming some of that just to give me a little bit more taper. For the rib, I am using some number 10 here. A little bit bigger. Because again, I have a piece just laying here. I'm going to leave that a little bit long, put one wrap to hold that in. The body is some orange floss. I'm using a orange Danville 4-strand Rayon floss. Here's what the label looks like in a orange color. I've got all 4 strands here. I'm going to tie this in on my side of the hook just a little bit long. I do want to make certain that's anchored in all the way at the back so the application starts right at the back and covers up any thread wraps. You could, if you wanted to, have that floss run the length of the body. I don't think it's really necessary. You already have a little bit of a bump in the back. Some videos I've done, I've started up at near the eye of the hook and put a base layer of thread down. You certainly could do that. If I were making this a full floss body, I would, or not floss, but tinsel body, I would do that so that I have a base to glue that tinsel to. So with that, all the thread moved up to the front here and the base down here, I'm going to apply the floss and then I will apply the rib. Careful there, I just lost one strand of floss in my hand, which caused all of that to unwrap, and now it looks a mess. I'm trying to collect that. I just pinched the body and let it unwrap a little bit, trying to get that one strand back collected with the others. Just take your time with it. This is the reason why you want to make certain all that floss, when you tie that in to apply it, it is long enough that it doesn't slip out of your hands. But sometimes happens. Don't panic. Just think it through. Easy fix, especially this is a fishing fly. Streamers, the number of wraps you get on the rib is not as important as making certain that they're fairly evenly spaced. I've got a little bit wider wrap right there, but all of these are pretty even. You just make certain that it's evenly spaced so it looks nice. Okay, so there's the body. We're ready for the throat and then the wing. Now there is no belly on this. A lot of Carrie Stevens streamers do have a bucktail belly. They may even have a little bit of peacock curl and or some an underwing, or as she calls it, part of the wing is peacock curl. But our throat is made up of some white hackle, which I'm using some white Shlappen for this, and topped off with some yellow. So again, I don't mind if I have a little bit of the base of this feather, some of these barbs that are a little fluffy on the ends as part of my throat, especially on the fishing flies. I'm going to get a clump off. Now, understand you want this clump to be about half what the whole clump would be, because you're going to have some yellow on top of it. It's going to go down about halfway down the belly, should say the body. And then I have some yellow Schlappen for the throat as well. Again, I'm taking about half of what I want for this first clump of throat barbs, fibers, whatever you want to call them, so that between the white and the yellow, it makes up pretty much the density that I want of the throat. Now, the throat on these Carrie Stevens flies are tied in 3 parts. You'll notice that when I tied that first one in, it was a little bit further back. The next are going to be tied a little further forward on the sides to help cover up these thread wraps on the sides. So I'm going to take a little bit more white. And I like to do these where I have a little bit of white on this side and then do the white on the other, and then do the yellow on top of both. Otherwise, what I find is that the yellow sometimes can get kind of, if you try to tie in, you try to tie in the yellow and white at the same time, say you put them together in your hand, the yellow kind of gets lost in it, in my opinion. Now, what happened there was I've got a little hangnail, on my hands here, just doing outside work, things like that. I got a rough little bit of skin that grabbed that thread and just kind of popped it around. So sometimes you have to be a little careful. I'll get a little bit more white for the other side. Tie that in, a couple loose wraps just to get that anchored in. And now I'll put the yellow on. Now you probably notice that the thread is slowly advancing up the hook shank here, just up into the head space, and that's fine. We're using the throat here to cover up thread wraps of previous material, which is a technique that Carrie Stevens incorporated when she tied her streamers. And I don't know if that's because in tying these streamers, she was tying them by hand. The floss that was used was a thicker binding material than a lot of the threads that we have these days. I don't know if it was just a required technique to make the fly look a little more streamlined and finished, and to cover up some of the previous steps. I haven't quite researched and learned all about that just yet. So I'm going to smooth this off, make the head space here, and I'm going to leave my thread about the middle of the head space. So as I said, there's no underwing or anything like that on the Gray Miller. The wing is simply 2 Gray Hackles flanked on each side by a Grizzly Hackle that's a little bit shorter and a cheek of Jungle Cock. These wings are already prepped, and I have a couple of different videos out there on how I prep my wings. So they're already all glued together with some rubber cement, so that when I get to this step, they're all processed, and all I have to do is just tie them in. You could tie these in separate if you wanted to tie these in. The Gray Hackles first, those 2 for both sides on, and then put the Grizzly on, and then finally the cheek if you wanted to so do it that way. I find it more cumbersome, and I imagine some people don't think much of this technique, but at the same time, that's how Carrie Stevens also did hers. And I think, one, it makes a big difference from the standpoint of tying the flies, and it's going to make a real big difference in terms of being a production fly tyer, because you could make your wings ahead of time. You could prep them and have your wings all made. So when you get an order for some gray millers in, all you have to do is, you may even have the bodies all tied up ahead of time, but all you have to do is put them together and the order's done. Now, I don't have the head completely covered here because the head consists of a black thread head with an orange band. I'm going to leave the white hanging there, and I'm going to attach my black thread, which is a 210 denier in black. No, excuse me, that's a Danville 70 denier in black. I'm going to attach this right behind the eye of the head, start wrapping rearward. After I get that secured, I'm going to stop and trim away the tag of black and the white thread. I'm going to make certain I've got the first third of the head covered up in black here, and as you can see, that's also kind of smoothed it off a little bit there. Now I've got some orange, and this is a uni thread 8/0 in a pumpkin orange, a little bit brighter than the Danville orange, so I like to use this. I'm going to bring that right up against the black thread there, and I'm going to attach that right at the end of the black. Again, going rearward just a little bit to secure the tag end of the orange as well as the black. Then I can trim away the orange. I want to trim away the black, and the reason is, if I don't trim away the black, I'm going to end up with a black line underneath that orange right back here in the band. I may have just a little bit anyway. Now, I could put enough thread wraps on there to pretty much cover up any of that, any black band that would show up there, but you want to take care to not put so many thread wraps on here that it bulks up the middle of the fly. So there I get my orange band in. The idea again is I have it divided into thirds. Not always an exact science, and it always doesn't turn out exactly the way you wanted it to, but that's the attempt. And then I'm going to reattach the black thread, making a few wraps rearward to secure the black tag of thread and then the orange. I can cut the black away, then I can cut the orange away, and I can finish up the black band on the rear of the head. Mine always tend up to be the black bands in the rears a little bit wider. They seem to not have quite the proportions down as much as I want, but I think it looks pretty good. Just make certain you're getting everything covered so it all looks nice and even. I got one little bit of white right there next to the orange. But be very deliberate in your thread wraps here, because again, you don't want to put so many in that you end up bulking up those bands of thread. You want it to look fairly uniform in its taper from the base of the wing down to the eye of the hook. Put a little wax on my thread so that when I do my whip finish, that wax will help that thread not pop out and slide out from under those wraps of the whip finish. So I'm going to put some head cement. This is Fly Tight head cement. It's a thinner alcohol-based head cement. It soaks right down into those thread wraps. That will set up the head. And then I'm going to come back in a minute and I will put a couple coats of a gloss lacquer on top. And that is mostly to protect the head, not necessarily to give it a nice glossy sheen. We just want to protect those thread wraps so that our fishing fly will fish a little bit longer. So that's the Gray Miller, another Carrie Stevens fly from the Hilliard book. Thanks for watching today. Thank you for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned a new pattern, at least a tip or trick here and there. If you'd like to help Dress Irons, you can like, comment, share, subscribe, all those wonderful things for the video. You can also head out to dressedirons.com where you can buy flies, tools, stickers, and merch, or you can join a growing community over on Locals at the Dressed Irons Fly Tying Guild. You can also donate to Dressed Irons if you want through the link at the bottom of the description. I thank everybody for their ongoing support, as it really does help the creation of these videos. But what's important is to remember, only fly tying. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.